We're with Ren Wen.
Yes.
Is that right? So
Right.
Ren is your family name?
Ren is my family name.
And Wen is your given
and Wen
name?
is my given name. Yes.
Okay, so in Chinese you have your family name first, then
That's
your
right.
given name.
That's right.
So, Ren Wen, what is your job these days? What do you do?
Okay, now I'm a professor at the Graduate School of Translation and Interpretation at Beijing Foreign Studies University.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, I actually newly moved to this university. I used to work at Sichuan University. I was placed at the College of Foreign Languages and Cultures, and I joined Beiwai BFSU last September.
That's Beijing Foreign Studies University,
Beijing Foreign
right?
Studies University. Yeah. And so I'm a newcomer to this university.
Good. But this is one of the most prestigious places in China for translation and interpreting.
And as well as language study and language study, linguistics, different branches of linguistics.
So what do you teach?
I teach, I used to teach interpreting and a little bit of translation and public speaking in English. English is a second language. Public speaking by using English as a
You've
second
done lots
language.
of textbooks.
Yes.
About public speaking and about English learning.
Sort of. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
And then after I came to BFSU, I think I teach more or less the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I teach both practice, means interpreting practice, and then I also teach research in translation and interpreting studies.
But you're really an interpreting professional and scholar. Is that right?
Yes. Mostly, yes. Even if I was not trained to be an interpreter, I developed myself into an interpreter, and then I was invited to teach interpreting, and then I had to develop my research interest in this area as well, and that's why I sort of expanded my area of research as well as teaching.
Can we go back to your mid-20s when you were 23, 24, 25?
Okay.
Where were you then?
Well, at that time, I just finished my MA. I got my Master of Arts, or to be more specific.
At which university?
Sichuan University. I have to say I
Sichuan in China, right?
In Chengdu, Sichuan province, China. Chengdu, by the way, is the hometown of panda. And Sichuan,
I know, I've been there. Very good food.
Yes, it's very famous for its spicy food.
Yes, yes.
So I received all my higher education at Sichuan University. And during my master periods, my graduate study period, my focus was on American literature, or to be more specific, on William Faulkner. And I did a paper on him as my graduation thesis as an undergrad, and then later on, I went on with my study on him, and I did another paper, a graduation thesis, on another novel by William Faulkner.
So you're really a literary scholar.
Sort of.
At the beginning.
At the beginning, yes. And then, so that was why I didn't teach interpreting at the very beginning. I taught a number of other subjects, such as writing, language training.
Okay.
So
I noticed in your curriculum you had some time in the United States.
Yes.
So how did that come about?
That was between 2001 and 2002, and I was a Fulbright scholar placed at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and my interest then was on the ethnic American women's literature.
Right, okay.
Still literature.
The woman warrior, I saw. Yeah?
Woman warrior, Alice Walker, and all this female writers of ethnicity. I think it seems that my current research does little to overlap that part.
Yes, it's a big jump.
It's a
from
big
one
jump
to the other.
from women's literature to translation and interpreting studies. But then I think that also helps open my mind to
sure.
see things from different perspectives.
Absolutely.
From cultural, cross-cultural perspectives. So some people say that my background is somewhat different from other interpreting studies scholars. And that's why I are more likely to look at interpreting events or a phenomenon from a sociological perspective, an intercultural perspective. Not just linguistic or cognitive.
I saw as well you co-authored a paper or two papers with Ian Mason. One paper, yes.
One paper, but then we co-presented a paper
in
an international conference.
So this was work on dialogue interpreting, as he called it at that stage.
That's right. And that was, I think, the co-presentation took place in 2010 at a biannual conference on interpreting. And then we jointly published a paper on the power issue in face-to-face interpreting.
So this is drawing on your literary cultural studies background.
That helped me a lot. And I think it was really a very fruitful experience by working with Professor Ian Mason. We're great friends, and he also offered a lot of insight and inspiration into this. So it's really a collaboration between us.
Tell me about interpreting studies in China. Is it as advanced as translation studies, written translation studies?
Unfortunately, not really. I recently wrote a paper, and I give it to Professor Li Defeng.
Yes.
And it could it will be included in one of the book co-edited by him and another Chinese professor, and it was entitled Interpreting Studies in China Since 1949. And I gave a hopefully a somewhat detailed study, and also to the interpreting research, mostly in China's mainland, but also inclusive of those done by scholars in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan since 1949. And I divide the entire almost 70 years into a number of different stages, and I adopted content analysis method to do the research. So I think overall it lags behind translation studies somewhat. However, it witnesses a rapid or vigorous growth since 2006 or 2005, 2006, when interpreting and translation training has become more professional, or I think 2006 could be viewed as a milestone in professional education of translators and interpreters in China, because that was the year when translation and interpreting was recognized as the so-called independent major or discipline in our enrollment catalogs.
Right. This is when you get all the MTI programs.
BTI and MTI. Yeah. BTI in 2006 and MTI in 2007.
Of which you have some 250.
Now it is said that we have 249 universities
that's
capable
incredible.
of recruiting students of MTI programs. So it's a large number, and I think in this in more than a dozen years, I think interpreting studies really developed quite rapidly in terms of, the wide range of topics, and in terms of the scientific rigor, research methods adopted, the interdisciplinary nature of research, in terms of and also the inclusion of technology in research.
Are these all areas that you'd like to see research done? Or is there anything particular that you could recommend to a young researcher that they should look at?
Well, if I would like to recommend to young scholars or the would-be scholars, the PhD candidates, about what they should look at or they can think about in their future research, I would rather approach this from probably two aspects. One is research topics, and the other is research methods. For research topics, I think I think it's not probably a good idea to recommend anything specific. It has to be a topic that is of profound interest to them and is of importance.
Yes.
You have to be interested in this, but also has to be of interest to the academic community, right? So it has to carry weight, carry importance. And of course, on basis of this, it would be better if we address real-world problems. Because we know, I think we all had the experience of working on PhD, which is both a rewarding experience as well as a painful experience. For me, at least, I don't think that I enjoyed every minute of it.
What was your PhD on?
Oh,
You didn't ask, did we?
Yeah, my PhD was about subjectivity in something like a dialogue interpreting or liaison interpreting.
Yes.
So now we don't use subjectivity anymore, we use agency. But still, I mean, they're more or less the same. Subjectivity is probably more often used by philosophers, by literature.
Yes.
But agency is more used by sociologists, if I may say so, in a certain extent, to a certain extent.
Sure.
So I think it has to be interesting, it has to be important, but then I would also think the appropriate width, it cannot be too narrow or too broad. Well, of course, if you wanted to focus on one thing, and for PhD dissertation topic, it has to be very narrowed. But then, I think for PhD study, you have to find something for you to work on in the next 5 or even 10 years. Yeah. So it has to have certain width or elasticity, which you can develop some branches and to probe further. So you always have something to work on as your next 5 or 10 years as a young faculty member.
Excellent.
Right. So that's what I think. It has to address real world problem, but then it also needs to have some kind of width.
Very good.
Depth.
Good.
Elasticity. This is what I think, and also I think I think this is probably more important for Chinese students. You know, in China's mainland, we would certainly hope that the students or PhD candidates should pay attention to, things that are related to our the so-called national strategy. For instance, now China is advocating the initiative of introducing its culture to other countries. So we have this so-called cultural translation, not in its traditional sense, but means to introducing Chinese culture, meaning Chinese products, to the world, to other countries, and this also carries the implication that translation into language 2, that means our B language, is becoming increasingly important. Now, well, it seems if I say so, then it looks like I'm very pragmatic, but as university researchers, you really have to be pragmatic, because if you wanted to apply for research funds, it has to be related to the problems that the country cares about, the solutions the state wants to have. So that's what I mean by being related to the so-called national strategy or initiative, because with the funding, you can go to academic conference, you can do interview, you can, it becomes less difficult for you to get published.
Good.
Once you have this research topic, I mean, the research project. And also, I think it will also be nice if the topic can be prospective.
Sorry?
By prospective, I mean forward-looking.
Going forward, yes.
Forward-looking. It doesn't mean that you cannot look back. Of course you can. There are always things that are of interest or continuous interest to people. That means what was interesting to people in the past can still be interesting to people now or in the future. But then we also have to be eye-opening. We have to look at things that are likely to be important to, training, to practice, and to research. Technology is one
Yes.
case in point.
Okay. Wen Ren, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes.